They laughed when I saluted the flag at my brother's graduation. They didn't know the blood that soaked the sand under my boots or the call sign whispered in military briefings they were never cleared to hear. But that night, someone who had fought beside me would finally speak, and when he did, my family's laughter died in their throats. My name is Emily Carter, and I've been called many things: failure, disappointment, disgrace, but never hero, not in this house. Anyway, the humid Savannah air clung to my skin as I stood in my childhood home, watching my family celebrate Logan's latest achievement. My brother, the golden child, had just been promoted to lieutenant commander in the Naval Reserve. The living room buzzed with congratulations, champagne glasses clinking, relatives fawning over his dress whites. I nursed a beer in the corner, invisible as always. "Emily, sweetie, could you help in the kitchen?" Mom's voice cut through the celebration, that fake sweetness she reserved for when company was around. Her eyes, though, held the familiar disappointment. "Since you're not really mingling." I followed her past the wall of family photos, Logan's commissioning ceremony, his wedding, his kids. The single photo of me in uniform was tucked behind a lamp, barely visible. Mom had moved it there after I came home. "Your father's telling everyone about Logan's training exercises," she said, arranging canapes with surgical precision. "Maybe don't mention your situation. We don't want to make things awkward." My situation. That's what they called my military service now. 6 years of my life reduced to an uncomfortable topic to avoid at parties. "Of course not," I said, my voice flat. The kitchen door swung open. Dad walked in, his own naval dress uniform from 30 years ago still fitting him perfectly. Thomas Carter, retired commander, the man who taught me to salute before I could tie my shoes. He barely glanced at me. "Logan's telling the Admiral's son about his deployment prep," he said to Mom. Then, finally acknowledging me, "Emily, try to look happy. This is your brother's moment." "I am happy for him," he snorted. "You know, if you'd stayed in that consulting firm instead of playing soldier, you'd have something to celebrate too. A real career. Stability." His voice dropped, meant to cut deep. "But you always had to be different, didn't you? Had to prove something. And what did you prove that you couldn't hack it?" The words hit their mark, as they always did. Playing soldier, like my service was a child's game, like the scars hidden under my blouse were from playground scrapes. "A woman who's never seen real combat doesn't understand honor," he continued, straightening his ribbons. "Logan understands. He's carrying on the family tradition properly." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Real combat. If only he knew about the night skies over Kandahar, the weight of an M4, the smell of aviation fuel mixed with sand and fear. But I couldn't tell him, would never be able to tell him. "There she is!" Logan's voice boomed as he entered the kitchen, his new insignia gleaming. "My little sister, the paper pusher." He ruffled my hair like I was 12. "How's the civilian life treating you? Bet you don't miss all that military bureaucracy." "It's fine," I managed. "Fine." He laughed, grabbing a beer. "Come on, Em, admit it. You're relieved to be out. All that, yes sir, no sir stuff wasn't really your thing anyway. Some people are meant for it. Some aren't." He clinked his bottle against mine. A condescending toast. "No shame in admitting you weren't cut out for the real military." Real military. The words echoed in my skull alongside the phantom sound of rotor blades. My fingers unconsciously traced the edge of the scar on my shoulder, hidden beneath my cardigan. 28 confirmed missions. 43 lives saved. 1 purple heart I couldn't tell anyone about. And here I stood, being lectured about the real military by someone who'd never heard a shot fired in anger. "You're right," I said quietly. "I wasn't cut out for it." Mom beamed, mistaking my surrender for agreement. "See, she's finally being honest about it. I told you, Thomas. She just needed time to accept that she made a mistake." A mistake. That's what they called the nights I couldn't sleep. Seeing faces of the men I'd pulled from hell, the times I'd flown into zones no one else would enter, the mission that ended with me carrying a wounded SEAL operator to my bird while under fire, my shoulder screaming from shrapnel, refusing morphine until everyone else was aboard. "Remember when she came to Logan's graduation from OCS?" Dad said to Mom, as if I wasn't standing right there. She actually saluted the flag like she'd earned it. I was so embarrassed. They laughed, all three of them. The sound crashed over me like a wave, drowning out everything else. In that moment, surrounded by my family's mockery, I felt more alone than I ever had in a combat zone. "I need some air," I said. "Don't go far." Mom called after me. "Dinner's in an hour, and the Petersons are coming. Try to prepare yourself. They'll probably ask what you're doing now." What I'm doing now, existing, pretending, keeping secrets that would shatter their narrow world, being called a disgrace by people who didn't know I'd been willing to die for strangers, people who didn't know that somewhere in a classified file, the name Spectre 1 meant something. But that was fine. I'd learned to live with their contempt. What I didn't know was that in less than 3 hours, my past would walk through their front door. And when it did, the truth would hit harder than any missile I'd ever dodged. The porch offered no relief from the suffocating weight of their judgment. I leaned against the railing, watching Spanish moss sway in the evening breeze, and let myself remember what they would never know. Operation Silent Harbor. Even the name was classified beyond their clearance levels. It started like any other night in Afghanistan, hot, dusty, and deceptively quiet, 0200 hours. I was prepping my MH-60 Blackhawk when the call came through encrypted channels. "Spectre 1, we have a situation." That was my call sign. Not Emily, not disappointment, not disgrace. Spectre 1, the ghost who flew where others wouldn't. The briefing was quick and brutal. A SEAL team, call sign Trident, had been ambushed during a high-value target extraction 30 miles inside hostile territory. Their extraction point was compromised. 2 operators wounded, 1 critical. Every other bird was either too far out or already committed to other missions. Command's voice crackled through my headset. "Spectre 1, you're the only asset in range. But be advised the LZ is hot. Multiple RPG teams confirmed." I remember the weight of that moment. The safe call would have been to wait for Apache support, but waiting meant those men would die. "Spectre 1, inbound," I'd responded, already firing up the engines. My co-pilot that night was Martinez, barely 23, on his 5th mission. His hands shook as he strapped in. "Captain Carter, Intel says there's at least—" "I know what Intel says." I cut him off, pulling pitch. "We're going anyway." The flight in was like threading a needle through hell. Tracers lit up the night sky like deadly fireworks. My bird took 3 hits before we even reached the valley, nothing critical, but enough to make Martinez pray in Spanish under his breath. I flew nap of the earth, skimming canyon walls so close I could count rocks in the moonlight. Then I saw them. Trident team, pinned down on a ridgeline, muzzle flashes giving away their position. The critical operator was being dragged by 2 others, leaving a dark trail in the dirt, and surrounding them, at least 40 Taliban fighters closing in. "Spectre 1, abort, abort." Command screamed in my ear. "LZ is too hot." But I was already descending. What happened next exists only in classified after-action reports and the memories of 11 men. I put that bird down under direct fire, rotor wash kicking up a dust storm that gave Trident the concealment they needed. Martinez laid down suppressing fire with the mounted gun while I held us steady, counting seconds, feeling impacts crater our armor. The team's leader was the last to board, carrying the wounded operator in a fireman's carry. Blood covered his face mask, but his eyes, I'll never forget those eyes. Clear, determined, grateful. He threw me a hand signal. "Get us out of here." An RPG exploded 10 feet from my rotor. Shrapnel tore through my door, caught my shoulder, sent hot metal deep into muscle. I bit through the pain, pulled collective, and climbed. Another rocket screamed past, so close the heat washed over my face. But we were airborne, limping, but flying. 11 souls depending on my hands staying steady on the controls. 20 minutes later, I put down at Forward Operating Base Chapman, medics already waiting. As they pulled the wounded from my bird, the team leader grabbed my arm. His name tape read, Donovan. "You're hit," he said, seeing the blood soaking my flight suit. "After you," I replied. He stared at me for a long moment. "What's your name? Captain Spectre 1? I said. "That's all you need to know." But he'd pressed something into my bloody palm, his challenge coin. "Ray Donovan," he said. "Commander, SEAL Team 7. I don't forget faces. Spectre 1, especially not the face of someone who flies into hell for strangers." The next morning, I was medevaced to Bagram. 2 weeks later, quietly reassigned stateside. The operation was classified so deep that my own commander couldn't access the files. Officially, Silent Harbor never happened. The 11 men I saved became ghosts in the system. My Purple Heart was authorized but never presented publicly. My service record shows administrative duties for those months. They gave me a choice: accept an honorable discharge with full benefits and a lifetime oath of silence, or stay in and never fly combat missions again. They said I'd seen too much, done too much, become too valuable as a potential intelligence asset to risk in combat anymore. So I came home. To this. To being called a paper pusher by my brother. To being labeled a failure by my father. To watching my mother hide my service photo behind a lamp. The scar on my shoulder throbbed, a physical reminder of a night that officially never happened. Somewhere, 11 men were alive because I'd made a choice. One of them was Ray Donovan, whose challenge coin I still carried in my pocket every single day, its weight a constant reminder that someone, somewhere, knew the truth. "Emily," Mom's voice drifted through the door. "The Petersons are here. Please try to be presentable." Presentable. I almost laughed. I'd presented myself to death itself and lived. But sure, I'd go pretend to be the family disappointment for the neighbors. I didn't know that 3 cars behind the Petersons, a rental sedan, was pulling up to our house. I didn't know that Ray Donovan had spent 2 years tracking down the ghost who'd saved his life. I didn't know that my carefully guarded secret was about to explode in my family's faces like one of those RPGs I'd dodged over Afghanistan. But even if I had known, I would have walked back into that house the same way quietly, accepting their disappointment, carrying my truth in silence. Some battles you fight with bullets and rockets, others you fight by simply enduring, until someone else decides it's time for the truth to win. The dining room felt like a stage where I played the same character every family gathering the disappointment, the one who couldn't measure up. I took my usual seat at the far end of the table, watching the Petersons gush over Logan's promotion while Mom served her famous pot roast with practiced Southern hospitality. Logan's following in Thomas's footsteps beautifully. Mrs. Peterson cooed, her pearls catching the chandelier light. "Unlike some who just drift." Her eyes flicked to me, a pointed glance that everyone pretended not to notice. I cut my meat methodically, each slice precise, controlled the way I used to prep for missions, turning chaos into manageable pieces. "Emily tried the military thing," Dad said, his tone dismissive as he poured wine for the guests. "But she learned quickly that real service requires a certain constitution. Not everyone has it." "She was in administration," Logan added, eager to pile on. "Filing reports, processing paperwork. Important work, sure, but not exactly frontline material." He turned to me with that condescending smile. "Remember when you came back from basic training, acting all tough, Dad had to remind you that completing paperwork doesn't make you a warrior?" The Petersons chuckled politely. Mom touched her napkin to her lips, hiding her own smile. "Emily's always been our dreamer, but we're glad she's back to reality now." Reality. I almost choked on the word. My reality included pulling bullet fragments from my flight suit. Their reality was this dining room, these careful social performances, these small humiliations served alongside the evening meal. "What are you doing now, dear?" Mrs. Peterson asked me directly, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Consulting," I replied flatly. "Technical writing." Oh, the disappointment in that single syllable was masterful. "Well, I suppose someone has to do it." "Not everyone can be a hero," Mr. Peterson added jovially, raising his glass to Logan. "Here's to those who serve with distinction." Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone except me. I stared at the wine in my glass, seeing instead the reflection of flames from a burning convoy, the faces of men I'd pulled from certain death. My left shoulder ached, it always did when the weather was changing, shrapnel having left its permanent reminder. "Emily doesn't drink to military service anymore," Dad observed, his voice carrying an edge. "Too painful, I imagine, being reminded of what she couldn't achieve." "Thomas," Mom said softly, a gentle warning. "What, it's true. She washed out. No shame in accepting limitations." He looked directly at me, though there is shame in pretending otherwise. "Remember when she showed up to Logan's commissioning ceremony in her dress uniform, acting like she'd earned the right to stand alongside real officers? I did earn, I started, then stopped." The words died in my throat, choked by classification levels and legal obligations. "You earned what?" Logan laughed. "A National Defense Service medal. Everyone gets those just for showing up. You want to compare ribbons, because I've got a few that actually mean something." He stood, his dress uniform immaculate, chest displaying his 3 rows of ribbons, all administrative achievements, all earned from behind a desk, but legitimate and public. Meanwhile, my distinguished flying cross sat in a safe deposit box I couldn't legally open. My Air Medal with Valor device existed only in classified files, and my Purple Heart was a ghost in the system. "Sit down, Logan," I said quietly. "Please." Something in my voice made him pause. For just a moment, he might have seen it, the combat veteran behind his dismissed sister's eyes, but then Dad laughed. "Look at that. She's giving orders now. Emily, sweetheart, you're not in your fantasy military anymore. In this house, real veterans get respect. Those who couldn't cut it, they stay quiet and learn their place." "My place," I repeated, the words tasting like sand and blood. "Your place," Dad confirmed, "is accepting that you failed. You weren't strong enough, weren't brave enough, weren't good enough, and that's fine. Not everyone can be. But stop pretending otherwise. It's embarrassing." The room fell silent except for the clink of silverware on china. The Petersons looked uncomfortable but didn't disagree. Mom studied her plate. Logan smirked, victory written across his face. I stood slowly, my napkin falling to my chair. "Excuse me." "Running away again," Dad called after me. "That's what you do best, isn't it?" I stopped at the doorway but didn't turn around. "No, Dad. What I do best is something you'll never understand, because understanding would require security clearance you'll never have. Dramatic exits don't make you special, Emily," Logan said. "They just make you pathetic." I walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and gripped the sink until my knuckles went white. In the mirror, I didn't see the disappointment they all expected. I saw Captain Emily Spectre 1 Carter, the pilot who'd flown 17 successful extractions in zones deemed unsurvivable, the woman who'd earned the quiet respect of the most elite warriors in the world, the ghost who saved lives in operations that would never make history books. My phone buzzed, an unknown number, but the message made my blood freeze. "Spectre 1, the Eagle has landed. Time to break silence. Trident 7. Ray Donovan, he was here. Somehow, impossibly, he was here." I splashed cold water on my face, steadied my breathing. When I walked back to the dining room, the conversation had moved on to Logan's upcoming training exercises. but through the window, I saw headlights turning into our driveway. "Oh," Mom said, checking her phone. "That must be Thomas's friend from the base. Did you invite someone?" "Dear," Dad frowned. "No, I didn't." The doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, because I knew who stood on the other side of that door, the one person who could destroy the carefully constructed narrative of my failure, the SEAL commander whose life I'd saved when everyone said it couldn't be done. My family thought I was a disgrace. They were about to learn what disgrace really looked like, and it was them, dismissing a hero at their own table. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the doorknob. Through the frosted glass, I could make out a tall figure in dress blues, standing at parade rest. The porch light caught the gold of his trident pin, the SEAL insignia that marked him as one of the elite. I opened the door, and there he was. Commander Ray Donovan looked exactly as I remembered, minus the blood and dirt of Afghanistan. His weathered face bore new lines. His dark hair had more gray, but those eyes, sharp, assessing, knowing, were unchanged. "Good evening," he said formally, loud enough for those behind me to hear. Then, quieter, meant only for me. "Hello, Spectre 1. "Commander," I managed, my throat tight. "May I come in? I believe your father is Thomas Carter. We have mutual acquaintances in the naval community." Before I could respond, Dad appeared behind me, chest puffed with sudden importance. "A SEAL commander at my door. This is an honor, sir. Thomas Carter, retired. Please, come in." Donovan stepped inside, his presence immediately commanding the foyer. Logan materialized like a moth to flame, eyes wide at the sight of Donovan's ribbon rack 5 rows deep, including a Navy Cross, Silver Star, and multiple Purple Hearts. "Commander." Logan read the name tape. "Donovan, wait. Are you the Ray Donovan SEAL Team 7? The guy from Operation Red Wings support?" "Among other things," Donovan replied evenly, his eyes never leaving mine. "This is incredible." Logan practically bounced. "Dad, this is a genuine legend. Sir, I'm Lieutenant Commander Logan Carter, Naval Reserve. I've studied your tactics and training." Donovan's mouth twitched slightly. "Training. Yes, very important." Mom appeared, flutter-handed and flushed. "Commander, what an unexpected pleasure. Would you join us for dinner? We were just—" "Actually," Donovan interrupted smoothly, "I came here for a specific purpose. I've been looking for someone for 2 years, someone who saved my life and the lives of my entire team." The room went still. Dad straightened, assuming Donovan meant some mutual military contact. Logan's eyes gleamed with the possibility of war stories. "We were just discussing military service," Dad said, gesturing toward the dining room. "My son Logan here is carrying on the family tradition. Real service. You understand. Not like—" He glanced at me dismissively. "Everyone is cut out for it." "No," Donovan agreed, his voice carrying an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "Not everyone is cut out to fly a damaged Blackhawk through active RPG fire at night with 0 support." Logan laughed nervously. "That's quite a story, sir. Where did this happen?" "Afghanistan, 30 miles inside Taliban territory. My team was pinned down, 2 wounded, ammunition running low. Command had written us off." Donovan moved into the dining room, everyone trailing behind him like disciples. "Then someone violated direct orders, flew into what everyone called a suicide run, and pulled us out." The Petersons leaned forward, captivated. Mom clasped her hands together. "How thrilling! Who was this pilot?" Donovan looked around the room slowly, taking in the family photos, Logan's prominently displayed awards, and finally, the barely visible picture of me in uniform hidden behind the lamp. He walked over and moved the lamp aside, revealing my photo clearly. "The pilot," he said, "was designated Spectre 1, one of the most classified operators in recent military history. Someone whose service record is so redacted that even I needed top-secret clearance just to confirm their identity. Spectre 1, Logan repeated, almost reverently. I've heard rumors about that call sign. Some kind of ghost pilot, right. Nobody knew if they were real or just military legend. Oh, very real, Donovan said. In fact, Spectre 1 completed 17 confirmed high-risk extractions in zones designated as unsurvivable, saved 43 American lives, including mine. Dad puffed up. Well, Commander, if you're looking for this person, I'm afraid we can't help. We don't associate with those types of classified operators, though I'm sure my son Logan could. I've already found them, Donovan interrupted. The room fell silent. Donovan reached into his jacket and pulled out a challenge coin, identical to the one hidden in my bedroom drawer. He held it up, the light catching its etched surface. Spectre 1 never leave them behind. This coin, he said, I gave to the pilot who saved my life. Blood from their wounded shoulder was still on it when I pressed it into their hand. They told me their name was Spectre 1. Nothing more, but I never forget a face. Especially not the face of someone who flew through hell itself to save strangers. He turned to face me directly. Hello again, Captain Carter. The silence that followed was deafening. Logan's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Dad's face went white, then red, then white again. Mom's hand flew to her chest. The Petersons sat frozen, forks halfway to their mouths. That's... Logan started. That's impossible. Emily was in administration. She did paperwork. She flew missions so classified that acknowledging them would violate national security protocols, Donovan said coldly. She has a Purple Heart that can't be displayed, a distinguished flying cross that exists only in sealed files, and an air medal with valor that would make your administrative ribbons look like participation trophies. Lieutenant Commander. Logan's face flushed deep red. But she never said. Because she couldn't, Donovan snapped. Classification isn't a game. It's not something you brag about at family dinners. Real operators, the ones who do the darkest work, they carry their service in silence. He looked at my parents with barely concealed disgust. You called her a disgrace, a failure, someone who couldn't hack it in the real military. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Your daughter flew into situations that would make grown men weep. She took shrapnel to save lives. She earned the respect of the most elite warriors in the world. And she came home to this, to being mocked by people who don't even deserve to polish her boots. Dad tried to speak, his voice cracking. We didn't know. No, Donovan agreed. You didn't know, because you never asked. You assumed. You judged. You dismissed. He turned back to me, his expression softening. But we knew. Trident 7 never forgot Spectre 1. He pulled out an envelope from his jacket. Captain Carter, I've been authorized to present you with something 2 years overdue. Inside was an invitation to a classified ceremony at Naval Special Warfare Command, the kind of ceremony that didn't make newspapers, that happened behind closed doors with no cameras. Your brothers and sisters want to thank you properly, he said. The ones who matter, the ones who know what you really are. I took the envelope with shaking hands, unable to speak. Behind me, my family's world was collapsing. Every assumption, every cruel word, every dismissive laugh crumbling into ash. But I didn't care about their shock or their dawning horror at how wrong they'd been. All that mattered was the respect in Ray Donovan's eyes, the look that said I was seen, known, and valued by the only people whose opinion I'd ever truly earned. The silence stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. I stood there, envelope in hand, watching my family's faces cycle through disbelief, shock, and something that looked dangerously close to fear. The Petersons had stopped pretending to eat, their forks suspended in mid-air like frozen questions. Finally, Logan found his voice, though it came out strangled. There must be some mistake. Emily couldn't have. She never saw combat. She told us she did paperwork. I told you what I was allowed to tell you, I said quietly, my first words since Donovan's revelation. But, Mom's voice trembled, but you said you were in administration. I said I couldn't discuss my service. I corrected. You assumed the rest. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the china jump. No, this is some kind of elaborate joke. My daughter is not some classified operator. She washed out. She couldn't handle the pressure. She came home with her tail between her legs after taking shrapnel to the shoulder while extracting my team under heavy fire. Donovan interrupted, his voice sharp enough to cut steel. After flying missions that seasoned combat pilots refused, after earning commendations that your son could only dream of. You're lying, Logan said desperately. This is impossible. Spectre 1 is a myth, a legend. Some story pilots tell each other, not her. He gestured at me dismissively. Not my sister who quit, who gave up. Donovan's expression darkened. Lieutenant Commander Carter, would you like me to describe what your sister looked like with blood running down her face, still holding that bird steady while rockets exploded around us? Would you like to know how many times she flew into zones that were marked certain death on our tactical maps? Stop, Dad commanded, standing. I don't know what game you're playing, Commander, but sit down, Thomas, Donovan said, and something in his voice made my father obey instantly. You want to talk about games? Let's talk about the game you've been playing, the one where you humiliate a decorated veteran at your own dinner table, the one where you mock someone who has more courage in her little finger than everyone else in this room combined. He reached into his jacket again, pulling out a tablet. I assume you know what this is. He showed the screen to Dad a classified operations summary page, mostly redacted but with enough visible to be legitimate. Dad's face went ashen. This clearance level is higher than anything you ever had access to, Donovan confirmed. Higher than your son will ever see pushing papers in the reserves. This is the level where the real war happens, where people like your daughter operate. The Pentagon, Dad whispered, staring at the authentication stamps. The Pentagon has authorized me to share certain non-classified elements of Captain Carter's service record, specifically to counter potential security breaches that could arise from continued family speculation about her service. Donovan's words were formal, legal. In other words, they'd rather you know a fraction of the truth than have you stumbling around asking the wrong questions. Mrs. Peterson finally spoke, her voice tiny. Emily, dear, is this all true? I met her eyes. I can neither confirm nor deny operational details. Ma'am. Jesus Christ, Mr. Peterson breathed. She's giving us the agency answer. She's actually been sitting at your tables for 2 years, listening to you call her a failure, Donovan said. Listening to you praise lesser service while dismissing hers. Do you have any idea what that kind of silence costs someone? Logan's hands were shaking now. The graduation ceremony. When she saluted, we laughed at her. Dad said she hadn't earned it. She'd earned it before your commissioning ceremony even began, Donovan replied. She'd earned it in blood, in courage, in the kind of sacrifice you learn about in war college but never actually see. Why didn't you tell us? Mom's question came out as a sob, directed at me. Why did you let us say those things? Because I took an oath, I said simply. Because classified means classified. Because the safety of ongoing operations and active operators depended on my silence. But we're your family, Dad protested, his commanding voice now cracked and hollow. Yes, I agreed. You are. And you called me a disgrace without ever once considering that there might be more to the story. You never asked why someone who supposedly washed out had no negative marks on their DD-214. You never wondered why my discharge was honorable with full benefits. You never questioned why someone who couldn't hack it came home with eyes that had seen too much instead of too little. Donovan set his tablet on the table. Your daughter completed 73 combat missions. She has a flight record that reads like mythology. She's the reason 11 of America's finest warriors are still breathing. And tomorrow, at 0900 hours, she's expected at a ceremony where the only people in attendance will be those with clearance to know the truth. He turned to me. Captain Carter, will you be there? I looked at my family at their shattered assumptions, their crumbling pride, their dawning horror at years of cruelty toward someone who'd quietly borne their contempt while carrying secrets that would have crushed them. I'll be there, I said. Outstanding. Donovan stood, straightening his uniform. Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Logan. You should know that your daughter is a name whispered with reverence in communities you'll never have access to. She's a legend among those who actually matter in military circles. The fact that you didn't know that's not her failure. It's yours. He moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Logan. That training you mentioned earlier, where you studied my tactics, the extraction method that saved my team's life, the one they now teach at SEAL qualification. Your sister invented it, on the fly, under fire, while bleeding. Logan's face crumpled. He sank into his chair like a deflated balloon. Emily, Dad started, his voice breaking. We called you a disgrace, Mom finished, tears streaming down her face. We called you a failure at every family gathering. Yes, I said quietly. You did. The weight of those two words hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield, heavy, choking, impossible to ignore. Donovan opened the front door. Captain Carter, I'll see you tomorrow. As for the rest of you, he looked back with undisguised contempt. You'll have to live with knowing you had a hero at your table and treated her like trash. That's a weight I wouldn't wish on anyone. Almost. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like thunder. The commander's departure left a vacuum that seemed to suck all oxygen from the room. I remained standing, watching my family struggle to process what had just shattered their carefully constructed reality. The Petersons sat frozen, their food cold and forgotten, looking like they'd witnessed a car crash. Dad was the first to try to speak, his voice hoarse. Emily, I need to understand. The missions he mentioned are classified, I said flatly, and will remain so. But surely now that he revealed nothing operational, just confirmed my service was more than you assumed. The details stay buried. Logan's hands were fisted on the table, knuckles white. Spectre 1, you're actually Spectre 1, the ghost pilot, the one they say flew a Black Hawk through a sandstorm to extract Delta Force. You can't confirm, I started. I know. Classified. His laugh was bitter, broken. God, do you know how many times I've heard that call sign in briefings, in trainings? They use you as an example of impossible courage, and I've been calling you a failure. To your face. For 2 years. Mrs. Peterson finally found her voice. Perhaps we should go. No, Dad said suddenly, his commander voice trying to reassert itself. No, stay. You should hear this. You've heard us mock her enough times. You should hear the truth. He turned to me, and for the first time in years, I saw him actually look at me, not through me, not past me, but at me. That scar on your shoulder, you always said it was from a training accident. You never asked, I replied. You just assumed, like everything else. The nightmares, Mom whispered. The times I found you on the porch at 3 a.m, staring at nothing. I thought you were weak, unable to handle even basic service stress. I was seeing the faces of men I couldn't save, I said quietly. The ones I was 30 seconds too late for, the ones whose positions were overrun before I could reach them. The room fell silent again. Then Dad did something I'd never seen him do in 32 years. He sank into his chair and put his head in his hands. What have we done? He asked the table. What have we done to you? What you thought was right, I answered. surprised by my own lack of anger. You saw someone who came home early from service and went quiet about it. You drew conclusions. We destroyed you, Logan said, his voice cracking. Every family dinner, every gathering, every chance we got. We tore you down for sport, made you the punchline of every joke about failed ambition. I survived worse, I said, and the simple truth of it made him flinch. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. The ceremony tomorrow. Will you go? Yes. Will they? Dad raised his head, eyes red. Will they give you the recognition you deserve? They'll give me what they can within classification limits, a handshake, a coin, the knowledge that those who matter know the truth. That's it, Mom's voice pitched high with distress. After everything you've done, a handshake. That's more than most classified operators get, I said. We don't do it for recognition. We do it because someone has to. But we should have known, Dad insisted, his need to maintain some control evident. There should have been signs. There were signs, I interrupted. The way I moved, the way I checked exits in every room, the way I flinched at fireworks but stayed calm in actual emergencies, the way I could navigate in complete darkness. The way I knew things about military operations that shouldn't have been common knowledge. You just attributed it all to failure instead of experience. Logan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I need air. Running away, I asked, echoing his earlier mockery. That's what you do best, isn't it? He froze, his back to me. I deserve that. You deserve worse, I said calmly. But I'm not cruel. That's the difference between us. He turned, and I saw tears on his face. How do you not hate us? Who says I don't? The honesty of it hit everyone like a physical blow. But hate is heavy, and I've carried enough weight. I choose to put it down. The coin? Donovan had left his challenge coin on the table. Dad reached for it with shaking fingers. Never leave them behind. That's your motto. That's what I lived by, even when the them included people who would have left me behind in a heartbeat. The accusation hung between us, undeniable and sharp. We're sorry, Mom said, the words tumbling out. We're so sorry. No, I said quietly. You're shocked. You're embarrassed. You're horrified at being wrong. But sorry would have required seeing me as a person worth knowing before Commander Donovan forced you to. Dad stood slowly, his military bearing trying to reassert itself. Captain Carter. Don't! I cut him off. Don't you dare call me by my rank now. You haven't earned that right. He staggered as if I'd struck him. What can we do? How do we make this right? You don't, I said simply. You can't undo 2 years of cruelty with one night of revelation. You can't take back the words, the laughs, the dismissals. You can't retroactively respect someone you've thoroughly destroyed in every family gathering. Then what? Logan asked desperately. We just live with this. Yes, I said. The way I lived with your contempt, quietly, daily, without relief. I picked up Donovan's coin, feeling its familiar weight. Tomorrow, I'll stand in a room with people who've earned the right to know my name, who've bled in the same dirt, carried the same secrets, bore the same invisible scars. They'll call me Spectre One, and it will mean something. I looked at each of them in turn. Here in this house, I'll always be your disgrace. The only difference is now you know exactly what you've been disgracing. Mom sobbed openly. Dad aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Logan looked like he might be sick. The Petersons were already gathering their things, desperate to escape. Dinner's over, I announced unnecessarily. I have a 0900 report time tomorrow. I walked toward my childhood bedroom, leaving them with their shattered assumptions and cold food. At the doorway, I paused without turning. You know what the hardest part was, I asked the silence. It wasn't the missions. It wasn't the blood or the fear or the classification. It was coming home to people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and finding their love had more conditions than my security clearance. I left them with that truth, as heavy and inescapable as gravity. Behind me, I heard my father whisper, "Dear God, what have we done?" But God didn't answer, and neither did I. I didn't sleep. I sat on my childhood bed, still in the same position it had been when I left for basic training 12 years ago, holding Donovan's coin and watching the darkness fade into dawn. Through the thin walls, I could hear movement, Dad pacing his study, Mom crying softly in their bedroom, Logan's car starting and stopping in the driveway 3 times as if he couldn't decide whether to leave or stay. At 6:45 a.m., I showered and put on my service dress uniform for the first time since coming home. Every ribbon, every insignia perfectly placed, though most of their meanings would remain forever unspoken. The woman in the mirror looked different than the disappointment who'd sat at dinner last night. She looked like what she was, a warrior who'd earned her shadows. When I came downstairs, they were all there, waiting. Dad in his old dress uniform, Mom in black, Logan in his service dress. They stood like a receiving line at a funeral, which seemed appropriate. Something had died last night. "We want to come with you," Dad said. "You can't. Classified ceremony, invitation only." "Then we'll wait outside," Mom said quickly. "We'll be there when you're done." "Why?" The simple question seemed to break something in Logan. "Because we need to see it. We need to see them honor you. We need to know it's real." "My service doesn't become real just because you finally believe in it," I said. "Please," Dad said, and I'd never heard him use that word with me before. "Please, Emily, let us try." So I looked at them, these people who'd made my homecoming harder than any battlefield. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of their realizations. The contempt they'd worn so easily had been replaced by something that might have been shame, if shame ran deep enough. "You can drive me," I said finally. "But you wait in the parking lot. This isn't for you." The drive to Naval Amphibious Base Coronado took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of suffocating silence broken only by Mom's occasional sniffles and Dad clearing his throat. Logan sat beside me in the back, leaving careful space between us, as if I might burn him if he got too close. At the gate, the guard scanned my ID, his eyes widening slightly. "Captain Carter, you're expected. Building 71, ma'am." He looked at the others. "I'm sorry, but your passengers aren't on the access list." "They'll wait in the visitor lot," I said. Inside Building 71, I found them. 11 men in dress uniforms, standing at attention. The moment I entered, Donovan called out, "Spectre 1 on deck." They saluted as one. These weren't just any operators. These were the ghosts, the Tier 1 assets, the ones whose names would never make newspapers. And they were saluting me. "At ease," I managed, my voice thick. They relaxed, and then did something that broke through my careful control. They applauded, not the polite golf clap of military ceremonies, but real, thunderous approval. "About damn time," one of them said, Ramirez. I remembered, the one with the gut wound I'd held together during exfil. "We've been looking for you for 2 years. Another added, Stevens, whose wedding ring I'd found and returned after it fell off during the extraction. Donovan stepped forward with a mahogany box. "Captain Carter, this is long overdue." Inside lay 3 medals I'd earned but never received, the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal with Valor device, and the Purple Heart. Below them, a single piece of paper with 5 words, "With gratitude from Trident 7. "We can't publicize this," Donovan said. "Can't put it in your official record, but we can know, we can remember, and we can make sure the people who matter know what Spectre 1 means." One by one, they came forward. Each had a story, a mission I'd flown, a life I'd saved, a moment when Spectre 1 had been the difference between a flag-covered coffin and a homecoming. They spoke of nights I'd half forgotten, blurred by adrenaline and necessity. "You gave me my daughter's 5th birthday," Ramirez said simply. "You gave me the chance to see my son born." Stevens added, "You gave us hope when command wrote us off." Donovan concluded, And that's a debt we can never repay. Outside, through the window, I could see our car in the visitor lot. 3 figures stood beside it, watching the building, waiting. My family, finally understanding they'd been excluded from knowing who I really was, not by classification, but by their own cruel assumptions. "There's something else," Donovan said. He handed me an envelope. "Job offer, private sector, a company run by people like us. For people like us. Real work. Emily. The kind that matters. The kind where your skills aren't wasted on technical writing." I looked at the offer. The salary was triple what I made now. The work was exactly what I'd trained for, and most importantly, it was with people who knew my worth without needing proof. "Think about it," Donovan said. "But know this, you'll never have to explain yourself to us. Never have to hide who you are. Never have to sit at another table where you're the punchline." The ceremony ended with another round of salutes, handshakes that gripped like brotherhood, and promises to keep in touch through channels my family would never know existed. When I walked back to the parking lot, uniform pristine, medals boxed under my arm, my family straightened like recruits at inspection. "How was it?" Mom asked tentatively. "Classified," I said, but without malice, but meaningful. Dad's eyes went to the box. "Your medals. The ones that could be acknowledged." "Emily," Logan started. "I know we can't undo no," I agreed. "You can't. But we can do better," Dad said firmly, his commander voice trying one more time. "We can learn. We can earn back. My trust." I interrupted. "My respect. The years of support you should have given freely." I shook my head. "Some things, once broken, stay broken. You taught me that every time you laughed at my service." Mom was crying again, silent tears that ran down her cheeks like rain. "We lost you, didn't we? Not in Afghanistan, but here, at our own table." "You pushed me away," I corrected, actively, enthusiastically, cruelly. They absorbed this truth like a physical blow, shoulders sagging under its weight. "The job offer," I said, looking at the envelope Donovan had given me. "I'm going to take it. I'll be moving. Far from here." "Where?" Logan asked. "Somewhere I'm valued," I said simply. "Somewhere my silence is understood as strength, not assumed as weakness." Dad looked at me, this daughter he'd never known, and I saw him finally understand the magnitude of what he'd lost. "We called you a disgrace," he said, his voice hollow. "But we were the disgrace. We were the failure." "Yes," I agreed quietly. "You were." And for the first time since I'd come home, that truth didn't hurt to speak. It was simply fact, as immutable and real as my classified service record. The drive home was silent, but it was a different silence than before. Not the uncomfortable quiet of strangers, but the heavy stillness that follows a reckoning. When we pulled into the driveway, the afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the lawn where I'd played as a child. Before I knew what I'd become, before I understood that sometimes the people who should love you most are the ones who cut deepest, I went to my room and packed. It didn't take long. I'd never really unpacked, some part of me always knowing this wasn't home anymore. As I folded my uniform, Mom appeared in the doorway. "The neighborhood barbecue is next week," she said softly. "The Johnsons always ask about you." "Tell them the truth," I said, not looking up. "Tell them your daughter is a disgrace who couldn't hack it in the military." "Emily." "Or tell them nothing. It doesn't matter anymore." She stood there, twisting her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd inherited. "Will you ever forgive us?" I stopped packing and really looked at her. "Forgiveness would require you understanding what you're being forgiven for." "You think it's about the words, the jokes, the dismissals, but it's about something deeper. It's about choosing to see failure where you should have seen sacrifice. It's about needing a SEAL commander to force you to recognize your own daughter's worth." "We love you," she said desperately. "You love the idea of me," I corrected. The version that fits your narrative. The prodigal daughter who failed and came crawling home. You never loved the real me, the one who did things that would terrify you, who carries secrets that would break you, who earned respect from warriors while being disrespected at her own dinner table. Logan appeared beside Mom. "Can we at least stay in touch?" "Why?" I asked simply. "So you can feel better, so you can tell yourself you're trying, so you can mention at parties that your sister is Spectre 1, now that you know it means something." He flinched. "That's not—" "That's exactly what it is," I said. "You found out I'm valuable, and suddenly you want to keep me close. Where was this desire when you thought I was worthless?" Dad's voice came from the hallway. "We're still your family." I zipped my bag closed. "No, you're relatives. Family doesn't require security clearance to show basic respect. Family believes in you even when they don't understand you. Family stands by you when the world stands against you." I shouldered my bag. "You stood with the world." I walked past them, down the stairs I'd run down on Christmas mornings, through the kitchen where Mom had taught me to cook, past the garage where Dad had taught me to change oil. All these memories of before I became someone they couldn't understand, before their love proved conditional, before I learned that blood relations don't guarantee relationship. At the door, I turned one last time. They stood clustered at the top of the stairs, looking like mourners at a wake. "You want my forgiveness?" I said. "Earn it. Not from me, I'll be gone, but from the next person you decide isn't meeting your standards. The next person you're tempted to mock because their path doesn't match your expectations. Remember that you once had a hero at your table and called her a disgrace. Remember that you had 2 years to see past your assumptions and chose cruelty instead. Remember that it took someone else validating my worth for you to see it." "How do we contact you?" Mom asked, tears streaming. "You don't," I said. "I'll contact you if and when I'm ready. That might be never. Live with that uncertainty. It's a fraction of what I lived with every day in this house." I opened the door to find Donovan's rental car waiting at the curb. He'd known I'd take the job, known I'd need an escape. "Where will you go?" Dad called out, his commander voice finally completely broken. I looked back one more time, seeing them clearly not as the family who'd failed me, but as people who'd failed themselves. They'd had something precious and thrown it away with both hands, too blinded by their own pride to see what they were destroying. "Forward," I said. "I'm going forward." I got in Donovan's car and we drove away. In the side mirror, I watched them standing in the doorway, growing smaller with distance until they disappeared entirely, just like I had disappeared for them, long before they ever knew to miss me. "You okay?" Donovan asked. "I will be," I said, and meant it. As we headed toward the airport, toward my new life, I pulled out his challenge coin one more time. Never leave them behind. But sometimes, I realized, the bravest thing you can do is leave behind those who never saw you at all. The sun was setting as we reached the highway, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It looked like fire, like the skies over Afghanistan, like the burning bridges I was leaving behind, like the phoenix I was becoming from my own ashes. My phone buzzed. "Logan, please don't go like this." I deleted it without responding and turned the phone off. "No regrets?" Donovan asked. "None," I said. I gave them 2 years to see me. They chose blindness. I choose freedom. He smiled slightly. "Spectre 1, flying solo." "Not solo," I corrected, thinking of the 11 men who'd stood for me today, who'd seen my worth without needing proof. "Just flying with people who understand that some battles are fought in silence, some victories are classified, and some heroes look like disappointments to those who don't have clearance to know better." The city disappeared behind us as we drove toward whatever came next. I didn't look back. Heroes rarely do. My name is Emily Carter. I am Spectre 1. I am not a disgrace. And finally, flying free from those who called me one. I could breathe. The silence in the car wasn't heavy or uncomfortable. It was the silence of understanding, of respect, of recognition between warriors. It was the silence I'd earned, not the silence I'd been forced to keep, and for the first time since coming home, it felt like peace. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from, so please share in the comments below. Let's connect across the miles. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel for more powerful narratives like this one. And don't forget to share your thoughts. What would you have done in Emily's position? Your perspectives make our community richer. Until next time, keep flying high. And remember, your worth isn't determined by those who can't see your battles.